So on February 27th of 2025, which is about a week ago in the time I'm recording this video, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection dropped on the Switch and PC. Now, I had been battling whether or not I was going to buy this game, given that I don't tend to play my new games when I buy them on launch day, but with all the nostalgia I have for Yu-Gi-Oh! And it being the 25th anniversary, I kind of figured why not. Now, online, I have been hearing a lot of mixed things. I mean, the reviews are pretty positive, but a lot of times, reviews on YouTube especially have been, well, they should have added this, or this should be different, or why are there no console games, or why this, or why that. So these are things I'll definitely talk about after I go over each individual game little by little. Before I get fully into this game and the games on it, I have to say that I have loved Yu-Gi-Oh! For a very long time. When I was a kid, I watched it on Fox Block until my cousins switched it for Winx Club or whatever else they wanted to see instead. And it was in college, actually. I got really, really addicted because someone gave me a duel deck, like the Battle City duel deck. And those are pretty expensive. While they've reprinted them in the time since, those reprints are also very costly. So I was very lucky to have that, and it got me into watching YouTube videos about people unwrapping card packs. So, of course, that meant that I was going to Myers all over my area, and beyond my area, driving like an hour out in all directions, in order to buy crazy cards. And at this time, they also released speed duel decks, which I have become quite a fan of. And I would go over to my friend's house, we'd be wearing masks, sitting on the floor, speed dueling each other with the Weevil deck and Rex's deck, so dinosaurs versus insects. Besides that, I got very into collecting the old cards, which meant I was spending way too much money. I also got very into the statue collecting scene. So I just went all in and even started rewatching the anime, from the movies to the Capsule monster spin-off and just all kinds of things. I even went back on YouTube and watched the subtitled Season 0, which is very epic, and if you don't know what that is, it's awesome and you should probably watch it. So with that being said, I know quite a bit about Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I am not a queen of Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't know every in and out and remember all the things about dueling, because the only people I played against were amateurs like myself. I was a little hesitant because I am not very good at the card game as much as I am just a fan of the artwork and everything else. With that being said, these games are very early on. Like, this is the very first game, is Duel Monsters from 1998. It's a Game Boy game. So it does a little less of what the anime came to be. There's not a lot of summoning. It's very, very simplistic. Very rudimentary, but it's very addicting. So this collection allows you to use cheats. With this specific game, the only cheat you can do is unlock all cards. Now, in the future of these games, you have to have a certain duel level so that you can actually use really high-ranking cards, or else you're just wiping the floor with all of these other duelists, and that kind of kills the fun. It is nice that they let you do that, because then you don't have to play so grind-heavy in all of these games, so it's something that I'm definitely using when I do this. Now, this is set on like the duel boat before they get into the Pegasus fight, so it's very early in the anime. And with this game and multiple others on this collection, you have to fight each character. So you've got Yugi, Joey, Tristan, and Bakura, and you have to fight each of them 5 times. After you do this, and you build your deck up and you keep collecting better cards, or you already have the cards and you just learn how to use them better and make your own deck, you can go on to fight the others 5 times. So Weevil, Rex, Pegasus, all of these people you get to fight more and more and more. While the presentation is very simple and there is a lot of limitation, I feel as though it actually looks pretty good. Like, the card art is it's pixel art, but it looks very detailed, and you don't need to see the color for this. It looks totally fine as it is. The other interesting thing about this collection is that they have the fully printed manuals, which you actually will need for quite a number of these games, and we'll get to the ones that are very reliant on it. I like that these are included, and some of them even include really beautiful art. Duel Monsters 2 Dark Duel Stories. With this one, the cheats include Dark Stage character select, maximum deck capacity, and you can unlock all of the cards. Now, I also forgot to say this before, but you don't just unlock all the cards, you can unlock a specified number of cards. So you can go from 1 to 9 on most of these games, and you can use multiple blue eyes or multiple Pot of Greed traps, whatever you need. Now, this game is very similar to the last one. And the presentation, now that it's on the Game Boy Color, is a little bit more colorized. It's not anything crazy. Each character kind of has a shtick. So like Joey's a little bit more green, Tristan's a little bit more blue, Yugi is more red, and Bakura is more purple. Other characters that you're fighting, you're going to Kaiba Core now, which is actually pretty fun to see. But you're fighting like Dox or a couple other weird characters that you're not totally used to seeing as much. Now, again, you have a trunk of cards that you collect. You collect new cards every time you win a duel, and then you keep building up your deck until you get better and better along the way there with your Duelist level. So now they have introduced Duelist levels in this one. Basically, instead of being able to use a full deck of 75 different blue eyes, you have to win a certain amount of duels in order to get a higher Duelist level so that you can use better cards. They implement this sort of thing more and more over time, but this is a little bit more of a rudimentary version. Now, with that being said, the rules were starting to become a little bit more set, so they introduced the main mechanic that's going to save your bacon in most of the other games. So let's say you have a 400 attack power card, and the opponent has like a 900, but it's of a Fiend archetype. If your 400 card has the light archetype, you can then take out the Fiend that's at 900 attack power. Now, if you're not aware, you also can juke the enemy by not flipping over your cards, because they actually need to see what you have in your hand flipped over, not in defense mode, or else they can't see what you've got, and then they can't pull out some scary card that's going to do the same thing back to you with the archetype that they know is going to screw you over. And I cannot suggest to you more that you really want a well-rounded deck of not just like really crazy big hitters, but cards that are going to be of different archetypes, because there could be times where that small little 200 attack power forest monster gets absolutely slayed by a different one. And again, this is why the manual thing is very helpful, in case you don't just remember this stuff off the top of your head and you're not like a very serious, card player. You don't have to stress so much. The next game is actually one that I ended up liking a lot, and it is called Monster Capsule from 2000. The cheats on this one are infinite capsules and infinite star chips. So this is based on one of the weird spin-offs from the anime, where there was a movie about your typical duel monsters becoming little capsules in like a rudimentary Final Fantasy type of RPG. It's actually less Final Fantasy, more like Dungeons and Dragons. And I thought that this game was super, super inventive. First of all, your friends get captured, they turn into little dolls that are played in the game. And you are battling people, getting little gashapons of your monsters that you're going to use in battles. And it plays like a Fire Emblem game. There are even like every capsule monster has different attack patterns. So like straight out from you, like your left and right, 2 spaces to your left, 2 spaces to your right. If you've got an ally next to you, you might get a better benefit and better hit rate. You might get a power-up if you're standing in a tree, and there are only a certain amount of enemies there. And while you battle random little people, you also go into really something special, which was that in this first example, you fight Mokuba, who is setting up you to save Joey, but he puts you in this little town where you, as Yugi, are like a hero of this town trying to find a princess. And as you go between the town, you unlock things, you meet people, you get information, and then you go into a forest where he decided that every couple moves, if you roll higher than a 30, you don't have to fight, but lower than a 30, you have to fight random enemies. So every single master is entirely a different kind of fight. It's really, really cool. I loved this one. I actually ended up putting a lot more time into this than any of the other ones. So 2002 Dark Duel Stories is back to the simpler gameplay of 5 wins on each character, so Joey, Yugi, all those people. It's pretty much the same in all aspects, except now the characters are increasingly getting nicer and nicer looking in the game. But the main gimmick with this one is that you have card construction. So each time you win a duel, not only does your duelist rank go up, and you get a better card to use in your deck, but you get something called card parts. And you can make your own cards that you can then use. It's actually very interesting. Now, this game also introduces the sacrifices or offers or tributes, whatever you're used to hearing. If you want a monster that's got a higher star count, so like if the stars on the card are 1 to 4, you don't have to sacrifice anything. If they're 5 to 6, you need to sacrifice 1 monster that's on your field, and then 7 to 8, it's 2 monsters. Now, there are also special monsters now. They have different kinds of borders, so Dark Magician Girl is stronger if the Dark Magician is also in play. They've introduced terrain cards, so if you have an Aqua deck, or you have just a lot of Aqua types of monsters, you might get 500 attack up or things like that. I also just have to shout out that I love My Valentine. She's one of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh characters, and she's finally in this one. And from here on, she tends to be in more of the games, which I love, because I think she's so funny. Now, the next couple games are actually from 2000, and they're duel monsters for Battle of Great Duelists. Now, each of these games is individual because they were trying to do that set of physical cards where you got the Joey set, the Kaiba set, or the Yugi set. I always go with Joey because I just really love his deck and I love his silly attitude. I absolutely love Joey so much. So with the cheats here, you actually can unlock the cards from the other decks, so you don't have to be stuck to just what Yugi has or Joey has or whatever, which I think is really awesome. And I really appreciate that they actually did that for this game. And this one is more of the same, except now you're fighting Mako and that ESP guy that I always forget his name, and you fight the dude who kind of looks like an M&M hidden inside of a mummy wrap. But it's more of the same. Okay, so the next game is very, very different. It's from 2003, and it's Dungeon Dice Monsters. I got super frustrated with this game. I actually used to have a complete in-box copy of this, and I sold it because I just didn't like the game that strongly. Now, I love the episodes of the anime with Dublin with this. I think it is so fun to watch, but playing it, I don't care. I just don't care. The manual explains everything really well, but I guess I'm illiterate because I just don't understand anything. Like, I cannot figure it out, even just like clicking around. Besides how I feel, it's got different tournaments that you can get into. You earn money to buy dice monsters from Grandpa, and I do think that his shop pixel art is the best the Yu-Gi-Oh games have looked up to this point. They look really, really good at this time. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about it, which I know is kind of silly. It might be for you. If you like something a little different, you want to break up the trading card game kind of stuff, this is it. 2002 released Eternal Duelist Soul. So I thought it was interesting that there are no longer duelist levels needed. So if you use the cheat where you unlock a bunch of cards, like, you can just absolutely kill this game and make insane decks. Which is kind of nice if you just want something simple and you want to just run through it. Now, with this being the first game on the GBA officially, this is the first real trading card simulator on the GBA for Yu-Gi-Oh! And while I see that, the pixel art looks pretty nice and the game flow has changed a lot. I'm not really a big fan of playing this one because it is slow as heck in between turns. They do this thing where, like in the real card game, you have phases. So you've got your, like, draw, your main phase, your battle phase, your phase 2, and then all of this stuff is now 2 seconds longer than it probably needs to be. It's less quick. Like, even from the very first Game Boy game, it's very snappy. Like, you can just pop in and out of battles like nothing. This goes for a very simple kind of stylistic look, but then because the game is so much more slowed down, I'm not here for it. Now, one thing that I give it kudos for is that every time you want to play, like let's say you want to play against Tristan, he might give you tips on how to duel other people or things that he changed about his deck that will give you hints as to what he's weak to. I think that's pretty interesting, and they do actually continue that further into the future. Moving on to the 2001 Duel Monsters 6 Expert. This is a Japanese-only game. I would say it's a lot easier to play if you have already played the 2003 Stairway to the Destined Duel GBA game, which is also part of this collection. I'm not entirely sure why, with all of the other games, you can play them from Japanese, French to English, and whatever else, but this was listed on its own. Now, with that being said, I have heard that this original Japanese version has different cards than what is in the Stairway to the Destined Duel game. So that might be why they included it. I don't know why they didn't just add, in hindsight, what this game had originally. I'm kind of thinking that they lazily kind of put this collection together in a lot of ways. They're more emulating than they are fixing anything about these games. I do have to say, though, that stylistically, this looks like Persona, which is kind of fun. And it starts that trend of starting with a random deck of cards that you pick at the very beginning of the game when you're choosing your name and all these sorts of things. I'm not the biggest fan of this, but because of the collection, like this specific early days collection, and you being able to unlock cards, it's not too bad. Alright, so 2003 Sacred Cards is a very popular Yu-Gi-Oh game because it's part of the Battle City tournament that everyone is so obsessed with. This is a very, very RPG-like. Like, you get to move around the locations that you see in the show. You kind of take over Joey's fights, so like you fight Weevil, you fight the Psychic, you fight the Graveyard guy, who I'm blanking on, and you fight Mai and a bunch of other people, but you have to go around and fight pretty much everyone, and as you fight like Rex or whoever, you start to unlock new areas of the city. It's not a super difficult game, so that's a plus, and it is just fun to like walk around and pretend you're just dueling it up. Like it's like totally childhood wish fulfillment. The cards now have become a little bit more complicated, so you're very much getting into like the spell and trap card era, which is fun, and I have gotten very used to summoning and just doing all the tributes and all this stuff. And you can too. If I can do it, you can too. And when you're getting in from this era on, it's again very, very, very important that you just really look at your deck and you make it well-rounded. You can buy cards from Grandpa's shop. You can like practice and spar with Joey, and I don't know. It's really fun. I quite liked it. But again, the gameplay does go in phases, kind of like the previous game I talked about, but it is a little bit faster, so it's not quite as tedious. And with this collection, you can save wherever you're at, so don't feel like you're going to lose all this progress. One thing they introduced that I did not take advantage of until later is that you get this thing called an anti-card. So in your trunk, not your deck, at the start of a battle, you can put up a card as an anti-card, and that means that whatever card you have, if you give them a crappy card that's like 100 attack power, if you win the duel, they're going to give you another card that's kind of crappy. If you give them a really good spell card and you win the duel, they're going to give you cards that are wild. Like I got a Summon Skull from Tristan one time. If you lose, then the flip side's going to happen, and you're going to lose that really awesome card. So you've got to be careful about that. So 2004's Reshef of Destruction is a well-known hard game. It's a unique story, and it's a very interesting story about the Millennium items getting stolen, and you, Joey, and Yugi have to go and find each one. And it's a very tough game. It starts tough, and it just keeps getting more tough. And the big reason why is that after every battle, you lose that LP, and you have to travel backwards to your room to get your health back. It does not auto-regenerate anymore. So if you think that you're gonna be bold and you're going to finish someone off and it's just a rando, you could totally get screwed. And you could be losing a ton of progress. Now, because this is the early days collection, you can save wherever, but it's a lot of backtracking in this regard, and sometimes that means traveling between multiple different maps. The load time is not long, but it does get tedious in this way. Plus, you get a very small amount of domino, which is currency, and you get a very small amount of the increase to your duelist level. The cheats do include unlocking all cards, maximum deck capacity, and the maximum duelist level, but in the game, your cards can only be so strong. They limit you on how strong your deck can be, and it changes over time, but even with the cheats on, you still can't put a ton of really, really strong, high star enemies. So you have to be careful about what you're doing, and I would say that this one, more than any of the other games, is very much about having really good trap and spell cards. Like, you need to use Regeki, you need to use Pot of Greed, you need to do all of these things, as much as you can. Now, one of the things that I really fell in love with this specific game, besides the difficulty, is that I thought that there was a lot going on in the story. Like, you randomly happen upon really interesting little things that you could totally skip over. I walked over to Kaiba's corporation, and he was standing outside with his brother and a little girl and a bear, which is Rebecca from the USA, who is in the tournament arc in the anime, wants to fight him to get back some glory. And instead of fighting Kaiba, she fights you, and if you beat her, it's a whole thing. Now, little stuff like this happens all the time, and it's really nice to know that it's not just repeating an arc of the anime yet again. It feels more personal. Everything about this game feels more personal because Joey and Yugi are also there just talking to you. It feels very cool. I really, really like this game, even though it is tough. Okay, we're almost done here, but with 2003 Worldwide Edition, Stairway to the Destined Duel, I didn't spend too much time with this. Again, it's the Battle City game that is just the English version of Duel Monsters 6. It's more of a visual novel style of storytelling. Like, not even characters are really on the screen all that often. It's very just like quick and to the point, which is more of what the future games start to be like, because they start to become less RPG and more card simulator. And with that being said, 2004's World Championship Tournament is very, very to the point, and it has a lot less heart in it, I would say. And from here on, I start to get a little bit about a lot of the games, because I'm way more interested in the games that were either entirely flipping Yu-Gi-Oh! On its head, like Capsule Monsters, or I really, really liked Reshef. So this is another game where you start with a random card deck. Again, you can unlock all the other cards with the cheats now. It's very straight to the point. There's no name you're giving yourself. It's limited to only a few battles at the beginning. So you've got Bakura, Tristan, Taya now, which is actually pretty cool, Grandpa, and Yugi. I thought it was interesting that when you're looking at the characters, so let's say you want to fight Taya, it warns you that she's the fighter who wants to maintain LP, whereas Tristan has high attack, or Bakura has more of a basic kind of deck. It's kind of cool that they did that. I wish that the other games actually did that more, even though when you're playing, you're going to kind of figure out like what kind of cards they use, if they're using Insect, if they're using Shadow, if they're using whatever. It was really cool to see that happen at first. It's very straightforward. Now, 2005 Destiny Board Traveler is a very different kind of game. It's the second to last on this collection. It's kind of like Mario Party if you were playing a Yu-Gi-Oh! Version of it. I really suggest that if you're going to play this one, you unlock all the characters and you unlock all of the kinds of maps, because it was really funny to be able to play as Dark Magician Girl or Yami Bakura or Grandpa or whoever. The only downside to this, I feel like it was a very, standard game. You have the manual, but it's not that hard to figure out if you're just kind of clicking around. You have to play with 4 players. I'm going to talk about this later, but there's only one online co-op game that you can play on this collection, which is kind of wild. And this is not the one. you're waiting for 3 other random robots to like click through their turns, and while they speed it up, it's still kind of stupid, because why can't I just entirely skip it? Like, there's no skip option. I liked it, but I didn't care a ton about it. I think I would have rather play it with friends. This is a good time to bring up the fact that even though with the GBA and the Game Boy Color and all of these systems, they really wanted you to have those dual connect cables, of course, they take that out. So you can't even play like split screen or online or anything. That was one of the biggest missteps, I think, about this collection. Because when I think of the other Yu-Gi-Oh games that have come out, they're almost always at least 2 players. And that's a huge benefit. Like, if I want to just duel, and I don't want to buy all of these expensive card sets, I should be able to play World Championship with a friend. And we make our own cards and we just do our thing. But they don't let you do that. So that's kind of a bummer. So the final game on the list is, in fact, the 2005 Seven Trials to Glory World Championship. This is the most updated deck before the DS era begins. I don't like the deck that they give you. I think the cards are terrible, and the game does this thing that I kind of got really triggered about, which was that even if you're buying a deck, you can't use the freaking deck for the most part, like a good chunk of the cards, because there's actually a ban list in the game. So on one hand, it's good because then you know the other people can't use Regeki or something and they can't wipe out all your cards. But that means that you have to really grind out the cards that you get, and you don't get a lot of money for very expensive cards. Even if you use the password system, which is like the cheat system in the games back in the day, if you had a certain card in real life, you could put the code on it and you'd be able to get it in the game. Well, now it costs an arm and a leg in the game to get the money and to get that card. I don't think it's a bad game, I just didn't have a ton of patience for it. So the only game that you can play online, Duel Monsters 4 Battle of Great Duelists. So that's the one where you either have Joey, Yugi, or Kaiba's decks. I have not played it online, and I don't think I ever will, because this is not the game that I think I'd want to play online. I'd want to play either the game that had the construction deck, so the Dark Duel stories, or I'd want to play like the World Championships games, because that feels more real. Like, that feels like what that was for. I mean, the Seven Trials to Glory was actually named after, well, before a tournament happened in 2005 or whatever. The only other real criticism I have about this is that you have a rewind button in this game. So let's say you screw up a turn and you're just like, oh my god, I wasn't looking and I messed it up and I'm like losing and I'm gonna probably die. You can back up with the L2 button, or ZL or whatever. I don't remember what it's called on Switch anymore. You can't speed up. And I think that if there was a speed up function, I wouldn't have a really boring time playing Seven Trials to Glory or World Championships or whatever. Now, while I think it's really, really cool that the physical collection came with a Harpy's Feather Duster card or a different card, it was random which one you got, I think it would have been really awesome if they even, like, not just printed 1 or 2 cards that came with each of these games, because at the time it was a big deal for you to be able to get some of these cards that came with the physical games. That was a huge selling point for people who played in tournaments and stuff. Well, local tournaments, not real tournaments. You'd probably get laughed out the room. I think they should have done like a little gallery of like artwork from not just the games, but like the cards that came with them. I think that would have been a really nice thing, especially with the original artist passing away. I am so sad still that he passed away. He actually passed away in 2022, right after I graduated college. I still remember it because I was teaching at an art camp at the time, and my friend made a like custom little Yugi sticker for me that I kept on my teaching notebook. Again, I'm still very, very happy and positive about this whole collection, and I've really enjoyed it. Like, I have played this every single day for multiple hours a day since it came out, and I think I will continue to. A lot of people are very upset that Duelist of Roses or the Forbidden Memories was not out when this is supposed to be the early days collection. I have a theory with how Konami has been, where they've been putting the Castlevania collections out and all these things, that they'll do more than one, especially because this game has seemed to sell pretty well. Yu-Gi-Oh games don't have, like, crazy expectations like other games do. This is not God of War. This is Yu-Gi-Oh! So I have a feeling that with this game only being on the PC and Switch, it was kind of intended as, like, a test. Like, the Switch always sells really well, and the PC is always just there for people to play for however long. The Switch is a home console, but it's also a portable console, so it makes sense that we got Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and GBA. I have a feeling that they will drop another collection, and it will be on the PS4, PS5, and possibly the Xbox and Switch 2. That will be like the early days collection 2, or modern collection, or whatever. And it will be from the PS1 era games to the PS2 and GameCube. And then in another time, I think that they'll do the DS games and PSP games, because there are quite a few, and I know that people are really, really into the GX Tag Force games, which I also quite enjoy. With all that being said, I'm sorry that this is kind of a long video, but again, I just really think this game is worth playing. I think you should pick it up. If you like Yu-Gi-Oh! At all, just pick this game up. It's $50 and it's probably going to go down. So thank you for watching. Hope to see you next time.